Hi. So for the next 3 days, the new unit that we're going to be working on is called Logical Fallacies, and you guys are of course going to be working on it on your own since I'll be out for the star prep. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a video just so you have some kind of like actual conversation or discussion on it. I didn't want you looking at it and being like, I have no idea what this is and I couldn't figure it out, even if I wanted to. So I'm going to go over a few things about logical fallacies. It is not the same thing as pathetic fallacy, which we know is, nature reacting to our main character's emotions. So for logical fallacies, all of this will be written down as well, but for logical fallacies, it is an argument based on falsehoods or a lack of knowledge. And you'll be surprised at how many of these you actually do know because you hear them often probably come out of your own mouth sometimes, which is kind of funny, but I'm going to show you a poster that you're going to be using for your own activities that you're going to be working on this week. We're going to talk a little bit about them. I'm going to write down all the examples, or as many of the examples as I can remember that I say in this video, and then you guys will be making your own as well. So let me go in and switch this screen so that you guys can see this poster. Okay, so the poster that I use is kind of a cute one, which is logical fallacies based on a robot's argument. So robots should take over the world. And so, of course, we have our two robots arguing. Some of the most common logical fallacies or arguments that are based on falsehoods or a lack of information are hasty generalizations, slippery slopes, circular arguments, straw man, either or, red herrings, but that one we'll come back to. Those are our more common ones, but we'll talk about all of them. So our hasty generalization, it's when they're making a claim about something without really knowing all of the facts. So you'll see that our little robot over here is saying, I have met a few people and I conclude that all humans are ugly, evil, and smell like socks. Well, our rational little robot over here says this is a hasty generalization. You have not studied enough examples for such a conclusion. So he's saying a few people represent all humans. So I'm thinking about when somebody says, all boys are bad because that ex-boyfriend that I had was terrible to me. That's a hasty generalization. Then we have our slippery slope. Our bad robot says, if we act nice to humans now, soon they will demand constant back rubs. Slippery slope, of course. The first event will not necessarily lead to such an extreme result. I'll give you a great example of this. When you first wanted to go out with your friends or even maybe a significant other, and you wanted to do it alone without your parents, and maybe a parent said, if you go out with them, you're going to end up pregnant, or you're going to end up getting somebody pregnant. That's a slippery slope. One event, simply going out, does not mean that you're going to end up pregnant or getting somebody pregnant at the end. That's just a very dramatic jump from one idea to another. Then we have circular argument. Robots are better leaders because of superior leadership skills. And then he says, you are restating your point instead of proving it. I think we've all been there when we know somebody else is right and we just don't want them to be right. So instead of agreeing, we keep denying it and restating our point. Like we just keep making the claim about whatever we're arguing about rather than just saying, okay, you're right. Maybe a good example of this would be, cats are the greatest because I love them. And then somebody's like, but dogs are better because they're cleaner. And it's like, no, I love cats, so they're the greatest. Okay, that's just a circular argument. And then we have straw man, which is where you're attacking a point of view that is not your own. So in this case where he's saying, remember, I went too far. Remember, the goal is that robots should take over the world, right? So this little robot is saying, why do you hate robots so much? But this robot says, I never said that I hated the robots. I was simply making other arguments towards yours. So a straw man is when you make an accusation against somebody when it was never even spoken by them. So if you're having an argument with somebody and you realize, again, that you're not quite right. Um, and then you decide to turn around and say, well, you're just saying that because you hate them, or you're just saying that because you think differently in this way. But they're like, I never even said that. Straw man. With either or, this is super simplification. So our bad robot, of course, says it is better to destroy the humans than let the humans destroy us. And he's like, you're oversimplifying it. There's more than two possible outcomes. This is kind of that black and white argument, right? So it's like saying, simply because we don't agree, you're wrong. And it's like, that doesn't work like that. That's not how an argument works. The fact that you have a different opinion than I do doesn't necessarily mean that it's black or white. It could mean that both of us are right. We just don't agree. And so, of course, this either or argument is pretty common, especially when somebody who's wrong is trying to shut down an argument. They try to go black and white instead of seeing the gray. The post hoc ergo propter hoc. This is an interesting one because it's literally just saying that because this one thing happened, it caused another thing, even though those two things could have been completely separate. So it's kind of like coincidence. So with this little bad robot, he says, I met a human and then I began malfunctioning. Humans are to blame. Just because he met a human doesn't mean they caused his malfunctioning. Maybe, let's see, one good example of that would be if we were having an argument about a restaurant, for instance. And I said, I went to Olive Garden and I had the spaghetti. My stomach was hurting so bad afterwards. Their spaghetti must be bad. Just because A followed B or B followed A doesn't mean that was true. It could have easily been that I ate too much rather than the spaghetti being bad. Probably would have happened no matter what I had eaten if I ate too much. So that's post hoc, ergo propter hoc. Then we have our red herring. This is a distraction argument, so pretty much trying to throw somebody for a loop so that they're distracted from whatever argument you were trying to make. So if our bad robot says, you say we should work alongside humans, but what about the human who short-circuited my friend? And then our good robot's like, that's unfortunate, but it's irrelevant and distracting from the main argument. The main argument being robots should take over the world, right? If we're saying, oh, what is, the best movie ever made? And then I disagree with the movie that you think was the best movie ever made, and you're like, well, what about that terrible, music video that was made this one time by that same, producer? And it's like, but that has nothing to do with movies. It has to do with music videos, which are very different. Then we have genetic fallacies. This one's a hard one, and it's one that you may struggle with, you may not. Some of you may get it right off the bat. So it's basically where our topic originated cannot be what judges it. So let's look at our example. So our little bad robot says, all humans start out as incompetent babies, so they must grow up to become incompetent adults. Well, that's a genetic fallacy because I can't blame what a human was at birth, or at least I can't blame their actions as adults on what they were at birth. This is very specific to people. So when you're thinking about genetic fallacies, be careful that it's always about people and or animals, living things pretty much. So if we had an argument about like a wolf, for instance, I'm just going to use a wolf. Like if I said, well, wolves are born with the instinct to hunt their prey, so they could never learn to stop killing things. Not true. They don't necessarily kill just to kill. They kill for food. And so that could be a genetic fallacy. That one's a hard one. It's not the easiest one for sure. And it's not one that we see often. Ad populum. This is an interesting one because we do this, I think, a lot as just humans, especially with our significant others or with our parents or with our friends, where we try to appeal to their emotional side. We want people to feel emotionally invested so that they'll stop arguing with the facts that we're presenting. So of course this little robot's like, where's your robot pride? And he's like, you're trying to appeal to my emotional circuits instead of presenting facts. That's like when you tell your parents that you want to go somewhere with your friends and they're like, no, you can't do that this weekend because we've got stuff to do. Or like, you've been out too often, and then you start going on about how you don't get to see your friends enough and how you feel like you're falling apart from them, and all of the emotions, but there's no actual fact there. And then we have moral equivalence. Our bad robot says the humans who make me do math for them are worse than Magma Droid, melter of hard drives. So this is one of those real exaggerated comparisons. It's like when somebody says, did you see how bad he was acting? He's like Hitler, which is a super exaggeration, because Hitler and somebody simply acting bad are very, very different. So there's no moral equivalence there. If I were to say that, like, I don't remember what his name is. There was a Chinese dynasty emperor who committed mass genocide. If I were to say he was like Hitler, then yes, that would morally be equivalent, but not just somebody acting out. Then there's begging the claim. Our bad robot says those evil humans need to be stopped. Begging the claim is basically saying, how can you call them evil if you haven't first proven it, right? If he had simply, those humans need to be stopped, that's one thing. But instead, he calls them evil right off the bat without proven information. That's like when saying, it's kind of almost like a stereotype in a way. Like if I were to say that, all white people do a certain thing or act a certain way, or what we see typically with like racial issues, right? So like those things, making those overarching statements about them, that would be begging the claim rather than actually making the point that was based in fact. And then ad hominem is our last one. Our good robot says, I conclude you should not be debating while you are malfunctioning. And then this bad robot says, that is attacking me and not my arguments. So simply, it's a retort where the person who's wrong in the argument gets mad because they think that the other person is trying to shut them down, even though they've been in the wrong the whole time. So ad hominem is usually just a flipped side. So that logical fallacy is committed by our false arguer. Okay, let me see. Coming back. All right, I am back. So I'm going to try and put down a lot of these. Your very first thing that you're going to be doing is going to be to actually create an example of every one of these, because I want to make sure that you're on the right path, that you have everything down the right way. I am going to try and, of course, get some feedback to you once you turn them in, so that you actually are on the right path before you do the actual activity, and before we move on through the steps. We'll be working on those things, so you won't see me the first 3 days, but you'll be working on making these, doing the practice, which is going to be over a very specific topic that you choose, and I'll try to give you some examples of those just so you're not completely lost. And then I think you'll be working on that second assignment for Tuesday and Wednesday, and then on Thursday and Friday I'll be back, so we can talk about them, we can make sure that you're on the right path, and then also just kind of keep going with the practice. And then of course next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday I'll be out again, and you'll be working on some Twitter stuff, so you'll need your phone of course at that point. But for right now, just worry about this, worry about going in and reading above. I think it should be above where I'm putting this video. If not, it's below. Just make sure you read it. It says me first, so that you know what I'm asking for you to do. Okay, so I will see all of y'all soon. Okay.